Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Horn,
Here.
Lehman, absent and excused. Gilman,
Here.
Chasm,
Here.
Underwood.
Here. Approve the agenda.
That we approve the agenda as published.
Second,
I will support.
all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Carries. Conflict of interest. Anybody have a conflict of interest today? Seeing none, public comment. Will there be any public comment today? Seeing no public comment, we'll move on to Bill. You're up.
He's not even ready.
Just let me run up here and do this. Okay, hi. Thanks for having me back. Want to give you an update on the Boardman River Crossing project. It's been a little slow in the last month because we've been finalizing our traffic numbers. We had a I call it a blip, a little bit of have to back up on our traffic projections and make sure we got it the way that MDOT will buy it. And so the growth rate was an issue. So we had to back up and revise our traffic numbers. We've got most of them finished. So we're going to be in the next few weeks finishing the alternative development for all of the alternatives except for the southernmost on the west end, which is, we're going to discard that. I think I've gone through that before. The initiation, as I described last month, the project is now properly classified in MDOT's eyes as an environmental assessment. The next step is in the formal process is their acceptance of the initiation, the actual initiation, the start of the 12-month clock. And we've been told that they want to see how we anticipate obtaining the money. So they want to see our funding plan, and our funding plan needs to have how we're going to build it. And one of the things we've developed in the last month is the need to prepare a phasing plan. There's no way we're going to build this whole project in one phase, most likely. Everybody agrees that that's the way it is. We're hearing a lot of this from MDOT's side too in the meetings we've had with them. They expect us to be able to break it up into projects that are fundable. So we're developing that phasing plan with a schedule that'll be incorporated into the funding plan. The funding plan is in WSP's hands. They're our sub. They're developing the funding plan and the application grant package. They'll identify what applications, what funding opportunities are that they are looking for. They'll be presenting that to you guys, and we will be presenting that to you guys before the next meeting, most likely shortly after the 4th. Actually, I'm supposed to get the draft of it tomorrow in my hands, so I'll be able to see what it looks like, and we'll be able to review it. So the funding plan is part of the initiation. MDOT won't initiate the project until we present this funding plan to them. Now, it won't be as specific as we're going to apply for this grant here, this grant there, this grant here. It's going to just identify the grant opportunities that we see in the future, and we'll go for the ones that make sense. The development of the EA is moving along. I discussed the traffic. We've developed. We're getting ready to submit to MDOT for the 106 application, which is the historic and cultural resource evaluation. Let them tell us how far we need to go in our survey to look for archaeological aspects of the project. We've taken pictures of all the buildings in the area. They want to know how many buildings are older than 50 years old in the project, so we've done that. What else is there? Oh, we're meeting with MDOT, as many of you know. We're meeting with MDOT on the 14th. That's a big meeting because the we need to convince them how important this project is to the region. So that's what the meeting is all about on 14th. And we appreciate the support we're getting from the board. It's very important for MDOT to see where the Grand Traverse County Road Commission and the county board are seeing the need. They need to see from you guys how important this is and hear you describe the local support, the counties, regional counties.
And as far as the people that you're meeting from MDOT, are any of them from here or are they out generally the people?
No, Dan Wagner's gonna be here.
Okay,
Dan Wagner.
because
from
those
the
people
TC.
can also express their opinion on it too. Because we'll need that support, because if we don't get that support, you know.
Well, they're the ones that are telling us where the state comments are coming from, like from Lansing and stuff, the folks that don't know this. So that's, and Scott Thayer from the region engineer, the North Region engineer, he's gonna be here.
Okay.
And so we feel pretty good about this. This is what we need. We can't build this project unless we get MDOT support. We're hoping that we don't need their money, which is, they can't give us any. That's part of their issue. They don't see this as a serious project because how are you gonna build it? You know, that's what they keep saying. Well, here's how we're going to build it. That's what the funding plan is all about. And I probably said more than I anticipated saying, but any questions?
About the funding plan, so if the project is going to be divided into phases, to what extent does the funding plan or to how much detail does it go into as to when do you have to have the funding secured for each phase? Let's just say there are 3 phases. Is the funding plan required to show that in order to move from phase 1 to phase 2, you have to have the funding secured for phase 2 by a certain time? And
Well, it's not gonna be that specific, but no, the reality is the funds have to be in place before we can move forward with any of the phases.
Sure,
Like
but
we
what's
have
the
to have
plan?
the right of way money in place before we can obtain the right of way.
But do you plan those out? Well, I guess the first related question is, it will depend upon how long each phase would take, correct? I mean, what's the average time for each phase, do you know? Like,
Well, we have that listed, like the bridge itself will likely be a 2-year project,
Okay,
construction project.
okay,
The road portion is probably gonna be 2 years too, because it's, you know, the impact to US 31 and the roundabout, you know, that.
sure.
So each one of them could be up to 2 years.
So during that 2-year phase, I'm assuming that you would be then working on securing funding.
Absolutely, for the next phase, absolutely.
And if all that funding can be secured, then obviously that delays the implementation of the subsequent phase.
If it can't be, it could, yes, yes.
So obviously, there's no guarantee in terms of how long this project would eventually take.
That's correct. That's correct. I know we're all optimistic and we want this to go forward. I see the huge need for this, but you know, it all depends on how much money we can get, you know.
What's your estimation from the first shovel to ribbon cutting? What's the time frame?
That's a tough question.
I mean, just approximate.
Well, if we go with phases, you know, it could be, when's 2031? That's what is.
8 years.
8 years
Yeah.
from actual building period.
Could be. I mean, to be honest with you, in my draft phasing plan, which is going to be in the, you know, I don't want to reveal it too much because you know, it's all draft, but that's what we're going to show. You know, the 3 phases, actually it's 4 because right-of-way acquisition is one of the phases, and there's 3 construction phases. Is that and the design can extend, we expect up to 2031. That's at this point.
Yeah.
So we'll see how the funding goes, we'll see how the design goes. If we don't find any major pitfalls or we run into any endangered species that we didn't know about, that stops the project, which has happened before, but as long as we don't run into any pitfalls. Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else?
I have a funding
I
question.
knew there was.
In regard to your search for looking for funding options for this project, how critical is our place in the MPO as far as being able to access access the type of large-scale funding grants that we would need for this project.
I think it's very important.
So if we were not
I'm
in the
not the
MPO,
expert on it.
that
But
would be a critical change to
Yes.
our ability to access funds for this type of project.
I see the development of the MPO happening at this point, a positive thing for this project, I really do. And the road commission needs to push, move this along.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Jason?
Well, I've always traditionally been a person, I just, when you're taking a look at federal funding and things that come with strings and costs, I mean, you go for 100 and you wind up in the end, because of the cost of doing it, you wind up net 60, 50 maybe by the time it's all said and done. And there are times I think that we have to look to the community and we have to say, is this important enough to you? And if we had to, we go and we put out the big ask and say, what can we do for 20 years? And are you willing to pay this for 20 years? This is a solution to a lot of the traffic issues that exist in the southern part of Traverse City and, South Airport and in this particular region, especially with the growth in Garfield Township, it's monstrous.
You're asking for our taxpayers to not only pay federal taxes that go into this pot that we can draw from, but to additionally pay for this.
I'm saying if we have problems with funding, I think we just have to keep
Right,
proceeding forward and sometimes we have to do the ask.
right, but we first try to go to the existing pots that our paychecks are already going into, that always go to Wayne County, Oakland County, Washtenaw County, because if my money keeps going to Wayne County and I have to keep giving my money to Wayne County and they continue to access money down in Wayne County, and yeah, I am picking on them because they get predominantly most of our dollars.
And still have crappy roads.
Right.
You know?
So if it keeps going down there and I still have to pay them, but then I'm gonna be asked to pay for my local project, I'm gonna say, who isn't advocating for us at the federal level to bring those dollars away from Wayne County to Grand Traverse County? And that's our vehicle. Our vehicle is the MPO. I don't like it any more than you do, but I know the value of it. The value of it is to access those funds that literally every single one of us in this room are paying for already.
Yeah.
I'd prefer to get them up here instead of another bridge in Wayne County.
So I think we have the MPO discussion later on.
And I'll say that as
Maybe
check, yeah, the MPO a little bit later.
Be done for Bill said.
So let Bill do this.
See you next month.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Bill. You're welcome. Consent calendar. Highly.
The consent calendar is used to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together without discussion. Request by any person present to remove any item from the consent calendar for full discussion as an agenda item are automatically respected. The action noted in parentheses for all items remaining on the consent calendar are approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. The manager recommends the following items be adopted. 1, minutes. 2, payroll. 3, accounts payable. 4, financial reports, and 5, communications.
Anybody wish to remove something from?
I don't wish to remove, but on page 5 of the minutes, it refers to John as Senator Watt.
Yeah.
I'm sure he appreciates the promotion, but he is a representative at this point, so if that's the only correction I had, but with that, I'll make a motion to approve the consent.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Lehman, absent and excused. Gilman,
Yes.
Chasm,
Yes.
Horn. Yes. Underwood.
Yes. On to reports, Brad.
Okay, there's a couple things here that need to be talked about a little bit. We have come to an agreement with the union and we will be discussing that after they have their vote next week. So the next meeting, we should be having a union contract in front of us. that we feel is a very comfortable setting for both sides, and everybody seems to get a little bit of what they want without anybody suffering anything drastic. We have begun looking at potential financial assistance as we are having a hard time getting an actual employee. So we have talked with our first company to see what it would be cost-wise for us to have them come in and do some of the month-end stuff, to actually have a second set of eyes looking at the stuff. This company, it's Raymond out of Traverse City, that they have an office, and they have 7 road commissions that they already deal with, and they provide the same service. So we are looking at that until we can find somebody that can fill the position, depending on the cost. We'll have to see. Right now, we have our auditor in, and he has been helping us get some little things straightened out. So far, we're very, very close to a balanced audit. There's a couple of little minor things, but the total difference is in like $1,000. And so at some point, you know, you figure out of that, that's a good number, and he's comfortable with it. He says there are checks that still have not cleared that were issued in the previous fiscal year. So there's issues there that we don't know if they ever will clear or not. And then the last thing is, just so everyone is aware, we are going to be in the parade on the 8th, I believe it is. We're going to be pulling the 1938 Studebaker with which is a snowplow. And we're going to be pulling it with a 2023 Western Star snowplow, just to show the difference in scope and size of these. I mean, it's tiny, and it's a snow blower type unit. So we are going to be there. Any commissioner, if they want to come with us, you're more than welcome. You can either sit on it or you can walk with us, whatever you want to do. And the one good news too, we finally got our maps. So if anybody wants any new maps, they're here.
Speaking of taxpayer funds.
Yeah, which I don't know.
Required.
Yeah, we're required to do, so that's where I stand.
That's the original app.
Yeah.
Road app.
And I want you to add in there that the crew actually restored this
Yes.
with their own volunteer time.
Yeah, this Studebaker was sitting idle at one point about 15 years ago. And the crew, they were debating what to do with it. And the mechanics came and said, look, why don't we fix this thing up? It's an awesome piece of history. Why don't we fix it up? So the road commission at the time agreed that they would pay for the parts as long as the mechanics were willing to do all of the work on their own time. And the mechanics restored this snowplow on their own time. The total cost in parts, because they actually fabricated some of the parts because we couldn't find them, was very minimal. And it's an amazing machine for those of you that haven't seen it. It's pretty phenomenal.
And it does actually run, but it has a non-hydraulic clutch. So
Yeah.
unless you're Hulk Hogan.
It's not easy, yes. So.
All right.
That's funny.
Commissioners updates. I'll start to my right.
I just proved to talk about housing.
Okay. All right, do you have anything you wanna from the?
Well,
anything you wanna-
the only update I have is, I attended along with Chair, the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners meeting yesterday to provide them with an update on the roadkill discussion. And my purpose was to provide them with historical background on how the situation came about and how it developed to where we are today. Starting with the December meeting with DNR officials and then going on from there. The discussions with Eagle and with our regressive council and and answered questions, some more reasonable than others, in my opinion, but apparently some think that the problem could be solved by having the road commission start an animal processing plant here. So that was one of the issues that was brought up by a commissioner. Why don't we get licensed for an animal processing facility?
And just so everybody else knows, I mean, for almost daily contact, trying to figure this out with the county.
So,
I know they're still waiting for
yeah,
bids
so,
to come back from
yeah, and we have
GFL or whatever,
GFL. So I think the most,
GFI.
and I emphasize to them that, we are ready to start picking up this roadkill the next day, once we have a solution here from either Eagle or through a vendor that is willing to provide that disposal service. That's the biggest issue, is that we don't have enough vendors who are willing to do that. So that's the update from that, and then obviously later on in the agenda when we have get to the MPO, then we'll discuss it.
I only have,
Thank you for doing that. I
You're
have
welcome.
heard from multiple people in the county what a great job you did.
Thank you.
And I didn't get a chance to watch it, and I wish I had. Thank you for doing that, because I know that that can be challenging.
I'm sure it was recorded, so.
In my spare time, I will watch it.
Yeah.
My only update is the interest that I have is it's down at Paradise Township. They have authorized their half of the Sherman Road start fee. I don't know if East Bay has, I assume they have, so that's gonna be
We
coming
haven't
to you.
received the check, but it should be here in the mail. They actually mailed it, so it should be here today or tomorrow. I don't know if it's made it yet.
It's just that Brad and I, we went to the Whitewater Township meeting and they had a concern about some stuff that was pretty close to their doors, literally. I mean, rocks at the end of the driveway, there's the neighbors. We got it taken care of, it's handled. It's nothing really too big. They seem to be happy with our brining solutions coming up. We explained how some of that material, Greg gave them a good explanation how some of that material is lasting even after the winter thaw in some cases, which is good. And
Compared to what we used to use.
save us a couple of bucks. They want, they were concerned, of course. They were concerned, of course, about after grading and what have you, but the stuff we have seems to be holding up better. So.
Okay, on to F. Bid recommendation, should have received an additional email on Monday. So, Brad?
Well, Wayne's gonna talk about this. Wayne, go ahead.
Nope, we received bids on June 15th for the HMA overlay program. We advertised in the regular and Mitten and gov bids, and supplied anything to interested third parties. Known qualified bidders were also notified. There were 0 addendums, and we had the following: one bid from Elmer Scranton Dozer for $1,983,607.02. Staff reviewed the bid. The bid was 10.73% over our engineer's estimate. Just for information wise, bid unit prices from Team Elmer were consistent with previous bids of earlier this year. The reason that what staff had did when we put up the engineer's estimate on that is we took an average of previous bids and estimated those and averaged the unit prices. So we were right in and around that average of the previous contracts. But we did have just the one bidder, and but everything does appear in proper context, and no weighting of the bids. So staff
This works with our asset management plan and takes care of that particular part of it at this particular stage of it. Before that road gets any worse.
Yes, so the reason that we have these 2 bid contracts is because we experienced an issue with our chip seal contractor not being able to provide all of the contracted work in this year. So we had remaining surplus, so we literally pulled ahead projects that would have been funded had our budget been larger for the year starting out with. So this fits right in with that asset management plan, addressing those needs out there.
And I noticed the difference in the cost. If we didn't take care of this now, I mean, it's pretty significant. So this overlay versus a crescent shape, I mean,
Exactly, yes.
Between $13 versus $50 per square yard.
Right.
That's pretty significant. I had.
Go ahead.
You said that you invited qualified vendors to submit bids. How many vendors were invited?
So the typical, so we always send out directly to our two local contractors, Reeve Riley and Team Elmers. Then it goes on BidGov, and that reaches out to all the contractors in northern lower Michigan as well as even central Michigan. It gets bounced around between other advertising companies and firms out there. So it reaches quite a few. And the question is always what's in there, what kind of room that they have in on their schedules, what's it looking like time-wise. And
yeah, but what an opportunity for a company if they were trying to do something and wanted to, a couple inches of overlay. I mean, there's no real hard engineering there. And, but if only one bid on it, I guess that's where we're at.
Well, like, I guess with respect to local vendors, the two, Reeve Riley and Elmers, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't they now one?
they
I
are,
mean, essentially, like if one bids, the other can't bid on that project.
explained to me that the parent companies of both of those are the one and the same. And so therefore, according to MDOT, that they cannot both competitively bid
Right, so
on the same
essentially we are
project.
it's one local vendor that can bid.
Correct.
And so what's the definition of local vendor? Does it have to be in Grand Traverse County?
No, it can be literally, a company out of Lansing, if they wanted to come up here. Of course, they gotta meet all the rules and they would have to put an HMA plant up here in order to be able to deliver HMA within the proper temperature. So we do also have, Molon is, they are MDOT approved.
Where are they located?
They're located here in
Okay,
our city.
were they invited?
They received information as well. They just chose not to bid.
I mean, I guess my point is that, it's kind of, we have to do more, I think, make more of an effort to identify, rather than just putting them on this BidGov site, which goes all over the state apparently. We have to make more of an effort to go beyond the two companies, which essentially is only one, and identify and specifically invite them to submit bids, because I'm hearing this over and over again. We sent out bids, we only got one. And I think at some point it becomes very non-competitive because we have to go with the one vendor that bid for whatever bid amount that is. I understand that there are other vendors that may not always have the right equipment or the sufficient equipment or whatever to finish the project, but I do think that we need to start thinking of out of the box ideas in terms of how we can maximize our tax dollars on these projects, because if projects are coming 10-11% above the estimate, then
And this goes back to an argument I made a couple of years ago, and I wish Alan was here, because it was part of that discussion we were talking about. We need to grow some other vendors. I mean, it just makes sense.
We have had Molon bid before, and there was a group out of Gaylord that bid a couple of times. I can't remember their
They
name.
bid on the roundabout project.
Yeah, so,
But
we have had.
You're a contractor, right?
yeah, I mean, and then realistically, the problem is where do they get their asphalt and are they big enough? I mean, realistically, when you're talking about paving a long stretch of road, you gotta have a good number of trucks and you gotta have continuously moving. And I mean, to travel for that, if they don't have, it's hard for them to compete. Yes, there needs to be more, but at this point, I mean, you're talking about a massive investment and we don't see anybody out there that.
This is 8.5 miles of 2-inch HMA. I mean, it's quite a bit of material. It's, you know, it's not as.
And I understand that, but I guess my concern is that if we have become part of an MPO and they're going to be, and as Brad has already said in previous meetings, that we are going to be having more projects, more bigger projects, this could become an issue for us. This lack of vendors bidding, because those projects are going to be costlier and costlier. And at some point, we need to start thinking about, do we need to buy some of this equipment so that we can lease it to some of these vendors, and so that they can do a project for a lower cost? Do we have to, should we be investing in an asphalt plant? You know, or entering into a contract with surrounding road commissions to buy into an asphalt
I
plant?
think as it grows, it'll also make it more competitive. When the
Didn't
market gets
Jackson,
bigger.
I mean,
didn't Jackson do their own asphalt plant, but then there's still a county that's grinding up asphalt too. I
So-
mean,
yeah.
but what I'm saying is they're going to dirt roads on some of their stuff too.
It's a lot of money.
It is.
So there are at least 2 road commissions that I'm aware of that actually own their own asphalt plant and they supply asphalt to others as well as themselves. Their main focus is their own operations, so that they do in-house, and then they also produce, their single largest customer is IDOT from Indiana, who comes and buys from them all of their cold patch for the entire season. They come up into southern Michigan, right there at the border, pick up all their cold patch and then head back to Indiana, so they have cold patch to use. But you're talking a massive operation to get that up and running, and that is problematic. They have an old plant, you know, it could not keep up with a lot of the production need that we have. And you start looking at, you know, what really happens is, you know, there are companies that have the capability, they're big enough that they could move into this area as a competing factor at some point. Whether or not they do, you know, I mean, you can't force them to come.
No, you can't force them, but my point is that rather than just specifically inviting 1 or 2 vendors and then the rest of you just putting on this bid gov, maybe we should make more of a personal effort to reach out to them and discuss with them.
Kind of the standard operation.
Yeah, and we can still put it on there, but we are also inviting them local vendors separately that they can bid on that. So why can't we just make that same contact with some other vendors?
I can tell you, we estimated putting in a plant, it's more than you want to spend.
My question is, how long does this project take to do? 18.45 miles? How long, time-wise, if everything went well? How long does that take?
Can we direct it to the people that are actually gonna do the work?
More than a week, right? More than a week,
Yeah,
Okay.
you're probably looking at 5 to 6 weeks, and there's also a lot of guardrail
right?
and
Oh, that's right.
subcontractors.
So if it's a company, say from downstate, where do all their employees stay? When, I mean, isn't our geographic isolation part of our issue with bidding in all sorts of arenas up
That's
here?
a
including
huge
construction?
issue with our contractors is
Mobilization.
they have difficulty bringing in their forces into our county and having any place for them to stay. Some of them deliberately, depending on the time of the year that we're looking at work done, they just won't bid because there's no, number one is their profits disappear because if you're looking at a small room for $250 on the extreme cheap side to not even having a campsite available, they're limited.
So I think to Hyder's point, I agree as at the vendor part. But what we consider a local vendor, which to me is geographically somewhere somebody could drive home at the end of the night to go to bed before they, when they finish their shift. Maybe we are more inclined towards that production facility if we're this northern kind of extreme end on that. It doesn't really allow for them to pad for housing for all of their employees for 5 or 6 weeks in a project, or at least on the work days. It makes it kind of something that they don't want to bid on. and this happens with builders. I mean, we're housing people coming up for contracting companies and buildings. And it's challenging and quite costly, but sometimes it's all we can get. So that I think limits our vendor ability here because we don't have anywhere for them to stay. So sometimes if you are geographically isolated, you do have to become the production facility, which then also allows you to provide for areas further north of the other. I'm not saying I want to do it.
I make the motion that we accept the Elmer's bid for the overlay, HMA overlay for River Road and Nesson Road in the amount of $1,983,607.02, more or less.
I will support because I got cut off and I was going to finish with that sentence.
Okay. I have one question. We don't have timing yet on this, right? When it's gonna happen?
No, it's likely September, probably late August, September.
Reason I ask is something's coming up later. All right, roll call.
Gilman,
Yes.
Chasm,
Yes.
Corn,
Yes.
Lehman, absent and excused, Underwood.
Yes. On to item G. Is that gonna be Wayne again?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is a recommendation for bid award for the HMA overlay and add paved shoulders. This again was received, bids were opened on June 15th for the project. Advertised and invited as the previous. And we had one contractor bid. The bid, confirmed low bid was for $2,613,030.73. And this was at 4.72% over our estimate, so well within reason. And the staff recommends award.
Kind of talked out the other issues.
Yeah, I think it's the same.
Is there any additional issues?
I am, I can't open this because it's a doc. So there was one comment in one of the explanation sheets that were sent. And it made reference to, is that it? No. Okay, it made reference to complete streets. Are we, do we have a published policy about complete streets?
We adopted a halfway there policy that says we will pave shoulders.
Okay,
And
'Cause that's
in
gonna-
areas that have high need,
okay,
we will make them 5 feet wide.
okay. Because I bristle at the entire language of complete streets, so referencing it is kind of a, you know.
It's kind of a scaled back version. We don't go 5 feet.
I love the wide shoulder. As wide as we can afford to do it, I think it makes our roads last longer.
Oh, that's-
And it's clearly far safer for anybody if they need to pull off, if you know, you got somebody who's biking or jogging, frankly. But I wanted to make sure that we weren't.
No, this is something that this as a board, I don't know if you were here at the point.
Yeah.
But I know Carl had talked about it and he had mentioned.
It might have been just before, you
Yeah.
know.
And they did not pass the full complete streets. It was
Yeah,
basically paving shoulders wherever possible. Okay.
That's my only question.
Anything else? You want to make the motion?
I will make the motion.
You keep spending them.
I will make the motion to approve the HMA overlay bid for County Road 633 and Curlin Road to be awarded to Elmer's Crane and Dozer Inc. in the amount of $2,613,030.73 more or less.
I'll second it.
Roll call, please.
Chasm,
Yes.
Corn.
Yes.
Lehman, absent and excused, Gilman.
Yep.
Underwood.
Yes. Item H. You still going with Wayne?
Yeah, last one for Wayne.
Let me cheat notes down here. Oh, there it is. I do see it. Sorry.
All right. Staff is seeking board approval for preliminary engineering services for signal modernization at the following two intersections. Hammond Road at Garfield Road in Garfield Township. and North Long Lake Road at Cedar Run Road in Garfield Township. These will be for fiscal year 2024 under signal modernization.
And these upgrades are necessary due to, as you indicate, structural deficiencies.
Correct.
When you say steel strain pole construction, you're talking about the steel bar with the steel bars, right?
No, we're talking steel, a steel strain pole. So that's the vertical pole is going to be the steel. And then this will be
Like the
strain
lines
wires.
are drawn,
Strain
okay.
wires, yep.
Okay.
Box.
Box fan. All of our upgrades are to the box fan.
Is that, are these two intersections right now part of Scoot?
No.
So is that why the modernization needed to upgrade them to Scoot because they can't be upgraded?
Not solely that, but when they are upgraded, they will be Scoot compliant. So that as Scoot moves into the Hammond Road corridor, then that intersection will be ready. North Long Lake and Cedar Run is part of our west side, and that is in the process of ongoing right now. But what these two intersections are doing is they are, we've got a lot of, or at differing times, the equipment has exceeded its normal lifespan, it's failing. These are a couple of our largest troublesome intersections.
And Cedar Run and Long Lake? That's, how old is that?
I don't have the specific years.
It was like, to me, it's like yesterday. I've been here so long, you know, it's like they just built that, you know?
What's the, I guess to Jason's point, what's the average lifespan of these signals? How often do they have to?
Varying components have the different lifespans. So you've got your signal heads, and those will have an average lifespan in and around that 10-year. There's a lot of movement there, you know, parts wear out, they get hit. You know, semis with a lot of snow on top. You've got your wiring, that's about a 10 to 15 year maximum. It just becomes extremely brittle, oxidized. So you need to be replacing that on out. Your strain poles, you get your 20 to 25 years out of your strain pole, but your wires, your strain wires are going to be in that, you know, that 10 to 15.
You know, the company that modularizes the wires and whatnot for replacement on these things will clean up. They can clean up because there's a whole bunch of road commissions saying, you know, I gotta replace all this, whereas, you know, if we could just do it, you know, from a protected location, right? Sure. Anyway.
It does, funny you should mention that, I gotta jump on it. Box fans are safer because it allows our signal techs to be occupying one lane of traffic. Because they'll close that one lane of traffic and that's all they have to worry about, is they're right there. Diagonal spans, they're in the middle of the intersection.
Right.
Getting it from all directions.
Yeah.
That is, safety is a key, you know, on this. The other, the signal cabinets and the various components within those have got varying lifespans as well. But those have been doing pretty good, and we are, as we continue on with our upgrades on our equipment, we are getting into where we are looking at having these, you know, properly replaced at appropriate timeframes. Those costs, you know, are dropped down quite a bit. Some of the equipment we can merely pull on out, take one off the shelf, put it on in, take it, then send it out and have it refurbished for you know, about half the price, have it recertified, and then it comes back and then we get to put it on the shelf.
Regarding the our asset management plan, are these signal upgrades, replacements, are these also governed by our asset?
We are in the process of implementing an asset management plan
Oh,
for
so the
signals.
current plan
Does
doesn't.
not, no, the current plan, we were keeping the pace of what the state spec before, and we were starting to move a little bit ahead, but by the time we submit the next asset management plan, signals have to be included. So we
When is
will have,
that going to be?
it was 3, is it 3 years after the last? We have 3, in between, we have 3 years. So it'll basically be just,
25?
yeah, so we just did it last year, so.
I just have one other engineering question, or kind of a, so we're going to the box.
Yes.
Okay. Are they going to be higher or are they going to be the same height? I mean, because obviously if it's a little further away, theoretically, the angle is still okay. But with the diagonal, it seems like the shear would be, it could take a little bit more force because it's distributed at an angle, you know. Whereas the shear on a direct hit sideways, is there any consideration in any of that? That's, I know it seems.
You're talking height to the bottom of the
Yeah,
signal.
height to the bottom of the signal, you know, and if they're getting hit by snow, you know, stone laden semis or something, you know.
We follow the standards for the height. There's a set standard in there for the height on these, and that's typically at your 18 feet. So that's you know, your semi.
And are we doing any side signals or anything as well? Or is that just gonna be, everything's gonna be up top?
We keep everything up there top. I mean, so, and we try to keep other utilities off of our stuff. We don't, you know, we don't want them in on our.
All right, I don't want to.
I got one question. So when these are done, when we're doing all these signals, they are going to be ready prepped for all the generators we bought if we have to use it, correct?
So, yeah, so we have our cabinets, and we've got what, 3 or 5 gold packs.
Okay.
Generator,
Yep.
cords, everything, blocks, chains.
So we're just
We can-
automatically
We
upgrading.
can
these
go
when
on
we
out,
so
we
that
can do those off, yeah.
I will make a motion to approve Hubble Rock and Park Inc. for preliminary engineering services for the Hammond Garfield and Marshmallow Cedar Run intersections in the amount of $64,553.80, more or less.
Motion's been made. Any further questions? We have a roll call vote, please.
Horn,
Yes.
Lehman. Absent and excused. Gilman,
Yes.
Chasm,
Yes.
Underwood.
Yes. Item I, Kingsley Building.
Okay, so as we were going through this and we had been meeting with Alan and Jason as part of the subcommittee to talk about the buildings. By the time we ended up adding everything in, we ended up with an estimate from our contractor at 10.5 million, give or take. So bids came in a week ago and they're at 13.5. So we are in the process of working with building codes to get some forgiveness on insulation factors, because that's one of the major things is for this to, we don't feel we need to insulate the car wash to office standard. It's going to be blowing hot water. It's not going to freeze up before it drains into the bottom. So we are working with building codes to get that reduced. And we're also working with them for our vehicle storage building because we have radiant floor heating. So there's a lot of things that we need to work through with them. And we also have some proposals for some value added engineering where they are coming in to look at how can we save some money on this. 13.5 million is way more than we feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I mean, we started off originally at 2.5, 3 million.
It was 4.5.
4.5, okay.
But that was staying on the location we were with the same.
Right, and then we went to 8.5 probably for moving it over and doing what we wanted to do, and then it became 10. It's like, okay, well, you know, and now we're at 13.
Yeah, and so based on some of the feedback that Grand Traverse has already got, we definitely have some good shave prices that we know we're going to be able to drop down quite a bit. We are hoping to meet with them with a total revalued proposal here coming up in the middle of July, which will then tell us where we are. And then at that point, we're probably gonna need to meet with the building subcommittee and to make some determination. Are we okay at this point, or are we still looking to shave more off, and how do we do that? So one of the big things, the biggest surprise to us was masonry. The masonry came in at more than double what the estimate was, because of the fact that it has to be able to support insulation in between it. So it was a double walled masonry. So we're working, like I say, that alone would shave off $800,000.
Was the building, I mean, have they adopted some LEED standard or something?
No, what it is, and our architect said, look, he's built tons of commercial buildings around, and he's never been able to get anything that is less than this standard. So Joe talked to Nate, and Nate said, hey, let's talk, and let's have him talk to the building codes enforcement guy, and let's see if we can't say, okay, well, because of this, we don't need this. Because of this, we don't need this. So we're working with them, and we're also talking about dropping the concrete wall a little bit farther down, because it's cheaper to build up with steel.
Yeah.
What it means that for that really is we still need to maintain that height so that our plows are, when they're sitting, we still have concrete right up above the top of those, the front end plows. Simply so that we can see when we're approaching that wall.
Sure.
We don't want to hit it with a plow on the front of the truck. So we are going to be coming back with that. So we're going to try and reduce a lot of cost out of this and see what we can do. And we'll come back probably in July with some more information. However, at the same time, I have been in contact with Nate and Dean Vaught, and they have put me in contact now with the building authority, which is what Grand Traverse County does overall. When they have a building, they go through the building authority. The building authority then takes care of getting the bonds, and it comes in under the county's bond rating, which means we would be at a lower cost. And they then, in theory, own the title of the building until we pay it off, and then they turn over the title of the building to us. It saves us a lot of money, and right now it's by far the best way for us to pay for this. The question then will become is, what do we want this payment to be at? Because they figure with a building in that 12 million or $11 million range, they are comfortable going out as far as 25 to 30 years if we want to drop the payment, but the interest rate goes up with every 5 years you add to the length of that. So those are some discussions that we're going to have when we get closer into this number and we start working with them to decide what type of bonds are we talking about taking out here? Because we just paid off Airport Road. That was about 800,000 and change every year that we were paying to get Airport Road when we did that reconstruct. So we definitely want to keep it somewhere in that range or lower if we can, I think, because we really do have a lot of roads that need to be paid. And so that is a decision for the board to make when we get to that point, you know, and he's going to have some information for me that say, okay, if you're bonding it at 15 years for this amount, it's going to be this much money. He's going to say, okay, per thousand or per million, it's this much to bond. And then he's going to give me by 5-year increments of what that interest rate looks like, how much interest we'll be paying, and what the payment would be. So it's still a little ways to go, but I cannot see us spending 13.5 million.
No,
that's just too much. And the car wash, instead of coming in at $1 million, came in at $1.8 million, mainly because of the installation.
So
and the double wall mason.
if I understand what you're saying, right now where we are is that we got a design build estimate from the architect.
From the Grand Traverse County, Grand Traverse Construction.
Yeah, but
The architect was a subcontractor. to
sure,
that.
but this is a design build estimate, the $13 million that you're talking about. This is a design build from the architect, you know, that's saying that designed and built in the way this building is going to cost approximately $13 million based upon.
No, he came in with an estimate with Grand Traverse Construction at 10.5.
Uh-huh.
Actual bids came back after that at
Okay.
13.5.
And how many bids did we receive?
They had every single item that they are not doing in-house bid out separately, so heating and cooling had different numbers than electrical. But
Okay.
yeah, so there were subcontractors. The biggest one that we had that was not at least three was for dirt work, and we got a bid from Elmer's, and we got a bid from Milan on that. We had an estimate of slightly over 2 million, and Milan came in at 2,000,006 or 2,000,007, and Elmer's came in at 3,000,005
That's what, that's.
for just dirt work and dealing with utilities, burying the water, burying the sewer.
So you said that the biggest increase is in masonry because of this insulation factor requirement. And then obviously there are increases associated with when the estimate was performed and the increase in prices of materials and so I'm guessing.
Yeah,
What's the reason then for an increase of that?
Yeah, I
if
think-
not that?
I think it's just the volatility
Right.
of the market right now. So example, Kalkaska, they're trying to pass a millage. So they went out for an estimate on their building, and they're building an administrative building for the road commission. And their estimates were about $21 million. Well, when they did the first estimate a year earlier, it was 19 million. So it went up 2 million in less than a year as they're now producing their millage information.
Sure, but going back to the initial point about the masonry part, which is the biggest increase. This plan, as of now, has not been submitted to the county construction codes department for a plan review process, correct?
We are close. We are gonna be talking, they're talking to them. Grant Travers is going up there tomorrow to talk to them
Okay.
about what can be shaved.
Sure, so that plan review process, based upon discussions that we have been having with the county regarding this R factor, hopefully could reduce some of the, bring down some of the costs, especially related to masonry. The other point is when you're talking about bonds, my understanding is you keep saying we can't afford to pay it, and I'm not disputing that, but isn't it also because initially we were shooting for 10-year payments versus 25 and 30?
Right.
So theoretically speaking, if we extended that bond period for 20, 25, 30 years, wouldn't we be able to afford to make the payments?
Yes, but it would be a long-term commitment that would be very, very, I mean, you know, we would have to put in some sort of refinancing verbiage, and I don't know all that much. That's why we have bond counsel that the county has. And that's when I'm waiting on the more detailed.
Early buy
information.
down date. or
Yeah, I
something.
mean, I guess, okay, obviously, ideally speaking, under ideal conditions, of course, you would want to have the least amount of payment period to repay the loans. I get that. But I think everyone agrees with that. But given the fact that we have all these factors that are playing into the cost, increased cost of it, I think it behooves us to at least have a discussion about how firm do we want to stick to the 10-year period versus extending it out so that we could come to a manageable payments and still have a facility that is going to serve our purpose long term. Because I was part of the discussions when we talked about wanting to add the car wash. There was an actual reason for doing that, not just because we wanted to have a car wash.
Right.
You know, so I think we need to kind of, before we start making statements that we just can't make the payments, we need to start having some discussions about at the board level, whether there's flexibility in that payment period where we can't afford to make the payment.
And I think the only reason I said it is because we were hoping to keep the duration of this very short. So at that point, it becomes a burden that I see as analyzing where our numbers are. Now, if we decide, you know, when we get to this point where we've got this reduced price, then it's going to be up to the board. Okay, how long do you want to take this bond out for?
Right.
And that's, I need to get that information back from the bond council too. But he said that is basically the best way for us to finance it is through.
Because I don't think the county is going to object, obviously, whether it's 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, you know. It's what we are comfortable with. And at the same time, balance it with having a that facility is gonna, hopefully it's gonna be there for a long time. So
Yeah.
we wanna have a facility that's gonna serve our purpose for a long period of time rather than cutting corners.
Right.
The last building in Kingsley is 70 years old. So, yeah, we expect it to last 70 years.
Right.
Well, we'll make those decisions and.
Yeah, so once I have some of the other stuff together,
They
we'll
come back
talk
and say
again
our
next month.
factor has to be this, and we have to do the double wall, well, then we have to make that decision.
Yes. So,
Well, I mean, you have to look at energy costs anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
so I mean, even though we have in-floor heat, it doesn't take away from the fact that we're gonna be losing up top if we don't have the right.
right, and it's not so much that we are gonna have that issue, but, it's also the fact that, you have garage doors that are opening.
Yeah.
That's the biggest loss of heat, is the garage doors that are opening throughout the day. And so, we take that into consideration. Obviously, the office space, we need it to be
Sure.
comfortable, so that when they're working out of that building, they have something that meets.
Gonna sell a lot of car washes to Kingsley.
Well, Kingsley Public Schools, Kingsley Public Schools came to us today and asked if they could get a deal worked out to save them the cost of having to pay for washing their contracted bus service.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if we can find a way to do it, we can sell it. And the Kingsley Village, they're very anxious to buy car washes from us, so.
And they want us to put this truck wash in, because it helps their sewer system tremendously.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
More flow, the better.
They were very honest about it in their meeting.
Yes.
So more to come in July.
Yes.
MPO discussion. Who wants to start on the MPO discussion?
I don't care. If you.
So I can start. I mean, so we had our the TTCI policy board meeting last Friday. And it was my first policy. So going in, we understood that the intergovernmental agreement was going to be presented to all the eligible entities, and there was going to be a discussion regarding the recommendations that were being made by Networks Northwest on two issues, the votes for each eligible participant and the dues that were going to be paid. And their recommendation was that every eligible participant should have one vote and equal dues. Based upon, some of the discussions that we had here at the board level when we passed that resolution, basically just saying that we will participate in this discussion. I informed the board of our position that we were not in agreement with the recommendation of one vote for every participant. And I explained the reasons. The reasons primarily were the number of miles of urban roads that we will have potentially as part of this MPO. Roughly, it will be about 240 urban miles of road, with the next highest being Traverse City, which with about roughly about 70 or 78 miles. Leelanau County is next, roughly about 20 miles. So that was the main reason for my recommendation, and what my recommended was that the road commission has 4 votes. The Traverse City will have 3, and then Garfield, East Bay, and Blair will have 2 votes each, and everyone else will have 1 vote. And there was a lot of discussion about that. Primarily, it had to do with even though I explained my reasons for it, had to do with why did we feel that we needed to have 4 votes? Well, going beyond simply the miles part of it, the other major concern I have in that recommendation is the way I understood it and understand is that these votes are votes which will determine the priority of the projects. So for example, each road agency, such as the such as the Grand Traverse County Road Commission, each road agency is responsible for bringing its own projects. No one else, for example, no one else like Leelanau County or Beta or Garfield Township, the city, can bring a project for the road commission. The road commission initiates its own project. And then it goes to this at the technical committee level, because there's a technical committee as well, and at that technical committee level, they discuss these projects. They determine how these projects are going to be prioritized from a funding standpoint. And then those recommendations come to the policy board, and the policy board then votes on those recommendations as to how to prioritize the projects. The dues are only, it's a matching thing. I think our contributions are 18 point some percent, and then the federal, there are two separate federal funds whose acronyms I can't remember, but they're about 85%. But the dues are specifically to fund the administrative services, which essentially is Networks Northwest, which will be providing the administrative services. So the dues, if you divide them equally based upon an estimate, it's about $3,500 per eligible entity. My concern here is this. I'm concerned that our projects, which, as we all know, they are determined based upon our asset management plan. Based upon the composition of the technical committee and the board, my concern is that they would not get that priority every time. So if we bring a project that we feel needs to be done in accordance with our asset management plan, there's no guarantee that that project, because it's subject to a vote, whether it will get the priority that we want it to have, or whether it's going to get bumped down to some other project that TART Trail or Groundworks for Resilient Communities or some other entity they have, data or whatever. That's my main concern. No one could assure me that that was not going to happen, other than MDOT saying, well, it's uncommon that for that situation to have occurred, but it can. The other part of that is, I know I've got to finish, and then you can start. Yeah. So the other part of that was, that was the one they voted on, that recommendation of one vote for each eligible entity, equal dues, and the motion passed 11-3. Road Commission voted no, the city voted no, and the county voted. Because the city is also in favor of a weighted vote. Their recommendation was that it should be 3 votes for the city, 3 for each of the Road Commission, and 3 for Beta.
Yeah,
And then everyone else gets 1 vote. The other items that we talked about and voted upon were a couple of amendments to the intergovernmental agreement. Primarily, the amendment that we voted on was a section in the governmental agreement that talked about how eligible entities in the future would be added to the MPO, and how entities could withdraw from the MPO. So as it was originally proposed, it required a simple majority vote for an eligible entity to be added, and a simple majority vote for an entity to withdraw. My argument was that if an entity is legally eligible to join an MPO, as long as their governing body votes to join the MPO, why does it need a vote
Of approval.
From the
Yeah,
policy?
yeah.
It made no sense. You know, it's up to the entity's governing
It's not
body.
a club, and it's like, do we want you to dilute our already existing kind of, whatever we got going on?
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then as far as withdrawing from the MPO, which required a simple majority, there was a discussion about
Why do
the
they need to take a vote?
the city asked if an entity could join or approve this intergovernmental agreement on a contingency basis. And my point was that if the provision as it was originally written would have required a simple majority vote of the vote of the policy board. And so you could essentially, why would you want to block someone who doesn't want to be part of the MPO? So it should be voluntary. You join in because you're eligible, and if you don't want to be part of the MPO, you withdraw.
Right.
And so the board agreed with my recommendations, and they voted to remove this language. So that's where we are right now. I repeatedly said that because there was a lot of discussion about some of the buzzwords, collaboration, we want, and then the negative, well, we don't want to be enough fiefdoms and all this, it's a regional approach. And I get all that. I get that this is all a collaborative approach, but it had nothing to do with, whether we are in favor of collaboration or not. It has to do with the realities that, yeah, we are the biggest road agency. We will be bringing the largest number of projects. So we have to have some assurances that our projects will receive the priorities that they should in order to, and our projects benefit everyone. They benefit all the townships, they benefit, all the other entities that are participating in. So where I am right now is I am not going to vote yes when it comes time to vote to approve this intergovernmental agreement as it is being proposed. However, I am willing to consider or reconsider my vote if we as a board adopt the resolution, making our participation in the MPO contingent. Essentially, I would be willing to agree to us participating on an MPO on a contingency basis, say, for example, until January 1st of 2025. I'm willing to participate. I'm willing to see if my concerns are actually real or imagined. And if I'm proven wrong, then that's great. Come January 2nd, 2025, or whenever our next meeting is, we can adopt a second resolution, basically participating in the MPO.
And that will come
participation
in July or whenever the document comes back to us, is what we talked about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that is.
So
He just sent it out
He
just
sent
as
it
I
out
was coming in.
Today, this afternoon. So that's what my update is. And
so I have some questions.
Sure.
Act 51 only goes to eligible agencies that are associated with Act 51.
So that's
If-
Leelanau County, Traverse City, and us.
And the beta part, I understand it has its own separate funds of stuff they get, correct?
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave beta over here. We operate under asset management by rule, right?
Pretty much, yeah. We
My
have some
statement-
flexibility on local streets, but not on our primary.
So the MPO could have this whole list of what they want the priorities are. And quite literally, the road commission could go, no, this is what we're going to do. That correct?
Well, yes, but you would not get federal funding at that. That's
So-
where the
So
funding
we would be basically where we're at today.
Yeah, we would default.
We would
go
be
to
defaulting
default
to
position,
today.
yeah.
If we said, no, we're not going to do that because they all get together and decide that it's a good decision to do the next item that we'll talk about in a minute. So really, if Act 51 agencies don't really want to participate, they can cause severe problems for the whole thing.
If the county votes no, and if the city of Traverse City votes, sorry, just slipping back into the time, sorry. And the city of Traverse City votes no, there's not enough population in the urbanized area to make this go.
To make it work.
Because I understand both sides. I understand why they want one vote, one entity, and I understand the Wayne side. So I'm just trying to figure out in my head, my little squirrely head here. This is federal money that comes into Act 51.
Agencies, for the most part.
For the
Now,
most part.
Beta is eligible
is-
for some of
but
the
it's-
Act 51
But it's
revenue.
under the transportation aspect.
Under the
Yes.
transportation aspect of it, which it's, again, I put them over on their own little side, so.
It doesn't stop us from doing our asset management plan.
Well,
It stops us from doing projects that have a large enough scope that it would require the federal dollars.
Here's my thought pattern. It would be nice to iron this out before you start fighting it out
Right.
after the.
But I
IPO.
don't want to give an impression that we would be stopped from doing anything in our own.
No, it was
plan.
only the federal,
This
yeah,
is
exactly. It's only federal
anything
money
that
dollars,
is
but
large
is that the
enough
federal
that
money we
would
get now?
need to access funds that we never.
So
So
right
federal
now
money
we
we
get
now.
385.
Three hundred and eighty-five
but that
thousand.
goes away, right?
Yeah, but that's going
Goes
away.
away.
That's going away. That gets rolled into the $1 million
Exactly.
Okay.
that the MPO has.
I'm just trying to figure out how we can impress upon all agents, all participants that Act 51 agencies, the city, the two county road commissions operate under.
I think they understand that. And that's the point is like, they understand that, but their statements to me were, well, we just don't see how your concerns are gonna play out. We just don't see, I don't think what you are stating is really a concern. And maybe it's not, but you know, I mean, but it would sure, but that's why I'm willing to consider, at least for my personally, a contingent participation, so that if my doubts are unfounded, then that's.
Well, as
fine.
far as concerns go, there's too many stakeholders.
Right, that's my
Okay,
point,
you know,
exactly.
and, I mean, for example, what is TART? Is TART a government agency now? Are they somehow legitimately, an MPO?
Well, I guess they are related to
Participant?
transportation,
Yeah.
intermodal
Well,
transportation,
they
so
do
they-
No, but this is, my point is, your taxpayer dollars going to a private organization.
Yeah, there's a set aside portion in your tax, in your fuel.
The gas tax. Or is
So,
it-
And, you know, and that, I mean, as a aside here, in addition, the tribe is part of this too. So, because they have some transportation impacts too, so.
There's Indian road legislation. I mean, that they have influence over.
So we use federal money, what, for Walton Road?
Well, we're using federal money in
And we're
two
using it for Parsons
locations
Road.
right now,
We're
right?
using it on Parsons.
Yeah, we did federal aid buyout, so.
So how does that affect, how does the MPO affect, if we were under an MPO before we started those projects, how does a vote of the metropolitan area affect those? Especially Walton Junction.
It sets,
So could Walton Road not have
Walton is rural.
Walton is rural.
So there's a separation between the rural and the non-rural.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I'm trying to make sure that
yeah,
the MPO can't block
here's-
us from taking care of the southern part of the county.
no, it has to be
There's
within
a
the
tricky little part
urbanization.
is when you have an MPO, depending on your limits of your MPO, which would be all of Grand Traverse County. Those, those rural projects have to be approved, they're submitted through the MPO.
Right,
So those rural dollars will still go through, supposedly they should just get a rubber stamp and pass on.
But there's a possibility will not happen. And that's my concern, because if we had Walton Road and we were under the MPO and they decided they didn't want to do that, then we're at odds, because Walton Road had to be done.
Well, because as long as Grand Traverse County and the city voted for it, population or density wise, that would be improved.
the projects will.
You don't have to have a majority of the voters at 1-to-1. You have to have a density vote as well, right?
No, this is 1-to-1.
But what if,
So-
you just said if Grand Traverse County and.
No, if they abstain out, if they vote no, they're not joining,
Oh,
then the whole MPO falls apart
Because
because you
that's what I
can't hit
need to-
75%.
And on clarification, Heather, so I can understand this, when you were talking about a contingency resolution. Prior to that, you had talked about the voting discussion you guys had about people being able to join or leave. We can just leave.
Right, but I want to make sure that we have something in place because I've through working with boards, I'm
So it's
cynical.
just
I don't,
something-
yeah, I don't trust
That's what
this. I
make
wanted
sure
to
that
come
there
back
wasn't
before this
something
board.
about-
Yep, I wanted to come back
So
before this
if
board.
we are not in the MPO, how does that negatively impact us?
Yeah.
That's the most important
No federal
question.
money, right?
We lose out on a lot of federal money.
A lot of, but not all. I
How
mean,
much approximately?
Well, there's still some federal money. You don't have to be an MPO to
Right.
apply for grants.
That's the money we're getting now.
No, these are grants that are out there that
Okay.
you don't need to be an MPO to apply for. So we would lose, the whole idea of the small urban is going away. There is no longer a small urban. If there's an MPO, that small urban money gets rolled into the MPO and it goes from
Got it.
338 or 383,000, whatever it is, up to $1 million and change. So that guaranteed revenue, which right now Traverse City takes 2 years, then we take, or Traverse City takes 1 year, then we take 2 years, and Traverse City takes 1. And every once in a blue moon, Leelanau County may have 1 year that they need a project.
If they're using it, that was the
Yeah.
explanation. that you
Yeah,
said.
so it's very rare. So, but you start looking at other federal funds that don't require the MPO, there are grants that are out there that we could still apply for, but we would lose out on the ability to apply for some of the grants that are much larger because they're designed for a regional approach.
Where was the $1 million coming from? What is that? With the $1
That's-
million?
That's where we were, that's the dollar amount that we are allocated because of the population of the MPO. So
If you
it's,
participate.
yeah, so the MPO at 54,000 and change or whatever it was, just under 55, I believe. That is where we get that $1 million, because that's the bottom of the smallest MPOs. You have to have 50 just to qualify. So as population grows, that million grows. So if we got, say, let's say in 30 years, population here is 150,000 and 75,000 of it's there, you're gonna have more. And the biggest change doesn't really come till you have 200,000 people in your metropolitan, in your urban area, which, God, that could be many, many, many moons out.
So $1 million is a guaranteed allocation.
Allocated
us.
every year, no matter what, to the MPO.
To the MPO, and how much of that $1 million would we be eligible for?
We could take it, I mean, we'd have to work out some agreement, because typically, you know, Beta gets a certain fraction of it every year. Just, it's just a
Yeah.
small fraction that they deal with, to deal with roadside stuff.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, like now, you know, the city receives 338.8 every year, or 1 year, and then we get 338.8, and that's based out of that total of 380 something.
Right, but that's the small urban fund.
So,
I'm talking
but that
about-
becomes the million now, and it's the same way. So it allocates out, I'm sure there would be some set aside carve out for Beta. Again, we don't know what that amount would be, but they're gonna get some small sliver, and then those projects are probably gonna be divided, 2 to the road commission,
One to the
1
city.
to the city,
Yeah.
2 to the
So,
road
so,
commission.
so it all
And then-
kind of is the same, but
It
the
just-
main difference is those great big projects, essentially.
Yeah, when you start applying for grants,
Right.
like you have, like, for example, when we talk about Long Lake and the fact that they need a lot more than $1 million worth of work to fix Strait and East Long Lake on Long Lake. The ability to apply for those grants, there are more grants available.
But,
when you are
but if we
MPO
weren't
than
in the
you're not.
MPO, that doesn't stop somebody from going to bat for us, like Congressman Bergman,
Right.
for example, who goes and gets us a modernization grant. That'll address certain things, like a great big bridge over a river and whatever, peanut shaped thing we have out in Long Lake potentially.
Right.
And here's my concern, on why I'm concerned that it's not a weighted vote. Is this board looks at the whole county. And under an MPO, the Walton Road project could have scored very low because you have
But
urban areas that want the money themselves.
They could never claim that rural money is the thing. So that rural money would still have to go somewhere outside.
It still has to go outside somewhere, so they
Rural
can't
stays
block
in
our
rural.
rural townships is what I'm,
No, because isn't the MPO only limited to the metropolitan planning area boundaries? It is Walton Road, isn't it outside?
It's outside.
It's outside.
but
So
they
the
can-
rural
well,
funds,
but the rural funds are rural funds. and
Yes.
MPO money is
Yes,
MPO money.
right.
and those rural funds are still gonna be
Just wanna make sure.
handled by the rural task force, which is
Okay.
us, Benzie and Leland now, right?
That's why I have the outer ring
Yes.
that doesn't have any population.
Your transportation. Yeah.
I guess my
Totally.
question is that when you were explaining the $1 million baseline funding and then how it's gonna be divvied up, are these votes going to be, are they material to how, will we, in other words, will the policy board be voting on how much of that $1 million get apportioned between the road agencies?
Yes.
Okay, so,
So you could have something that they vote, 3 years in a row, we're giving 100% to
Right.
Traverse City.
okay.
But, I mean, historically, we've been able to work it out because it's small urban. There's really only us in Traverse City and a little bit of Leelanau County, so it's always just been the agency.
That was just a cooperative thing between the agencies.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
if we have to vote on these things with potentially,
it's political.
it's now it's like.
And we have
stacking
to,
of the
well,
votes.
we have to ensure that we set our expectations and priorities in technical committee that, look, we don't care right now whether or not you push something else up the priority list. If this is our priority, we can't.
I think taking a lesson from the Garfield and the Metro fire thing that happened a couple of years ago, if you remember all that.
And it broke apart.
Well.
It didn't break apart.
But the threat was there and it made it work.
I was the attorney, I am the attorney there, so
Okay.
I'm pretty aware of.
My point is this,
Discussion.
unless you have a sufficient, you have to have a sufficient stick just in case. And the idea that somebody has to take a vote to allow you out of an MPO is ridiculous.
Right, and it's done, it's gone, so it's gone, that has been amended, and that is what my compromise approach is that I presented is that to me, a suitable compromise, and this is again, me speaking, is that we, and I want to do it a resolution, I don't want to do it in a motion, and I'll tell you why I want to do a resolution, because a resolution allows us to actually include our intent and purposes in terms of what we want, that we want to join the MPO committee, these are concerns, and it's an actual, rather than a standard motion.
Yep.
And given the recent experiences, I also don't have much trust in motions getting followed through. So I wanted.
I
in a
think you're doing a great
resolution.
job on that.
Yeah, I
do.
want it in a resolution, and if in July, that is the direction we take, then I would ask the chair to have me work with the staff to draft the resolution
Absolutely.
language, or if we can take a vote
I'm
today,
glad
but I
you're
want
doing
Alan
this.
to be here.
Yeah, but
Thank
it's gotta
you.
be. good.
And they haven't even seen the actual agreement yet. So we have a little bit of time, so.
But that is my
All right.
proposal, so that we don't have to have all this in a July meeting when we
That's
are
great.
doing,
Yeah,
but if that's the
please-
direction we
please
go,
do.
then I'm willing to work on that. Like,
I think that's the direction we need to go.
When is the next MPO meeting?
They are supposed to get this stuff back to us. And if there's questions or problems, they were going to schedule something right after the 4th. But if there's no questions or problems, they're just gonna kind of like say, okay, when can you take this before your board?
Yeah, I would think that would make sense.
So-
Otherwise, why would
So
you-
each of the entities that choose to move forward to the next step, the agreement before the.
And they have to approve the actual intergovernmental agreement at each board.
And the bylaws.
And I don't
And bylaws have to be.
bylaws can be approved after the organization.
Yeah, that's what.
Is-
So you anticipate seeing that intergovernmental agreement?
It came in just as I was walking into this room, and I have not had a chance to even open the email yet.
Okay.
I'm perplexed by this process, so I will not saying.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I think everybody is.
No, I think everybody's missing the big picture. This isn't taking anything away from us. It's giving us an opportunity. Human nature with change is to look at everything you lose, but I'm just asking you to look at everything you gain. This isn't some big conspiracy theory. I hate the idea of our federal taxes being done this way, but do you know how many municipalities in Michigan, Knuckles North, would give their right arm to be able to have opportunities to access these funds? And we're acting like we're being punished by it, and it's just perplexing to me. So I will defer to the July meeting to have the discussion, but I ask you to open up your mind to the opportunities that this gives us instead of this concern that we're gonna end up with losing things. Because I think we far outweigh with our gains than our losses on this. Just do a little reading on it and see what it gives you an option to do.
Well, in regards, I'm just making sure that somebody's not gonna be left behind. Because it becomes political when you get 13 entities voting on how things.
But they're only voting on regional projects.
But
We're not
they're
losing
voting
anything. We're
on-
gaining the opportunity of funds for regional
Well, we
projects.
can talk more about it, but I just.
It's just a really different thing.
Okay. Item, anything else? Item K.
All right, so Jay has been in touch with Isaiah, and they've had some good conversations about some things up there and what they're looking at. They have seen no grants available to them that they have found. We have found nothing, but a whole new NOFO batch is coming out soon, and we will be watching them as they come out here. Most of them are right around August 2nd-ish, whatever that
No,
is.
what?
The notice of funding.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Sorry, I'm so into the acronyms, I'm sorry.
Has Washington
We'll see about.
set any rules yet for?
No.
For the shoreline restoration?
Peter's thing is there's still no regulation behind it from the EPA.
How
There's
about Betsy Coffee?
no word yet.
Because we did write a letter.
Oh, good. Thanks, on Bluff Road.
The letter shows that we are all behind our state legislator that represents Old Mission Peninsula accessing funds for that road to be fixed.
You haven't received a response?
To the best of my knowledge, we have not. I will certainly
There are other
ask Isaiah to
priorities.
clarify on that. But
Yeah,
I would
and
go to her office, but her office is locked and the lights are off. She does not open her office. So when I'm in Lansing, I'm unable to access my state representative's office. So
We have done what we said we were doing and continue to follow up. So
Yes. And we will continue to deal with it. If we can find a funding opportunity, we will be all about applying for it. We did look into one that the township sent to us, and basically the points against us were so high, we knew we were never going to qualify because the program was designed to suit the needs of a disenfranchised area. And I would hardly consider Peninsula.
that would be a hard one.
Yes.
But I do believe that this is a perfect case for state allocation.
Yeah.
I think this is more of a case for that than grants, in some ways,
Well, and you know,
other than the
prior,
shoreline part of it.
prior to,
And we cannot apply for the shoreline stuff.
I
We can
understand.
encourage the county and we can encourage the
I
township.
understand that, yeah.
and prior to COVID, this was on the list. We were approved on the preliminary from committees to get $3 million back then. And then COVID happened and they pulled all that money away because they had a total of $46 million in shoreline
That's right,
restoration.
shoreline.
We have seen these
Just a
funds
spirit.
realized here too. A lot of people don't know that part of the Boardman Lake Loop was made possible by the coastal zone management grants. So there are federal dollars that have come into play on what we would consider smaller things that aren't, again, a regional approach. This is clearly not an MPO thing, and Bluff Road would not make the MPO because we don't have a regional approach of it. But this is specifically what I would think our state representative that represents that district could levy for down in Lansing.
And you know that particular district also has a county commissioner that belongs to the same political party as a state rep. So you would.
Which has some leverage.
Yeah, leverage there too.
So that would be something that, again, I would love to see happen because I think that is a project that is really potentially a great recipient for a state allocation.
So L, communications, I call it communications audit, so.
So basically what I did, and I just wanted to put something together here for you guys, because Joe and I have been talking about this a little bit, of how we communicate currently. And some of the new things that we have coming our way. We have, and policy, we have actually directive out to how people should be responding if they receive calls. But there are some other things that have really taken off this year. So my ask is for everybody to take a look at this more than anything. Come back to me, please, with comments, things that you think we need to look at as we come back in July and actually sit down and start saying, okay, these are things that make sense. The new communication initiatives are just a few things that we've put together. One of the new ones that's actually started is I'm going out and meeting with a lot of the township supervisors and operational staff now at townships. I had so far Long Lake and East Bay, and we're gonna be dealing with the more active ones to start looking at, hey, where are your projects? Specifically developments, because we're gonna have a lot of developments. And as we start looking at these developments, at some point, the volume on these 2-lane roads is excessive. And we need to be able to keep looking at what is this going to mean to our road system. So talking through some of that, and talking through some of the other issues they have, I like to believe that we're moving in the right direction here. Feel free, any comments you want to send my way, we can talk at any point to deal with. These are just, a couple of things that I'm looking at, like an annual report. The county does an annual report. So putting one together is fairly straightforward. Time frame of it is kind of hard because our audit doesn't happen until the middle of the year, and by then you're 6 months through. So if we start putting stuff in there, we want to have, some conditional or some ranges of what we spent. The other one is talking to the townships. Pretty much all of them are willing to give us a little space in their newsletter that they send out with tax bills to say, hey, this is what's happening in your township with the Grand Traverse County Road Commission. And that is going to be big for us as we start getting into residential areas for ditching. Because if we give people a year's notice to say, hey, you're gonna have to move your irrigation out of the ditch area, you're gonna need to move these ornamental flowers out so we can get a ditch dug so drainage can occur. It's gonna go a lot farther for us than coming up to them and saying, hey, in a week, we're gonna be here. So yeah, we wanna make sure we're letting them know. And so that also would allow us to, communicate other factors that are happening, projects that we know are coming in their direction, maybe at a 6-month, because they do 2 newsletters a year, most of them. So we would have to address that. And they did not have much objection to that. The quarterly newsletter is just a thought that we started with. I know for at least one person here, Oakland County Road Commission is a bad word. But they do a really good newsletter. I mean, it's something from one of the commissioners, it's something from the managing director, and it's something about technical things that are happening in neighborhoods and what the road commission is working towards in the future. So it really works well. I think, it's a possibility. I don't necessarily know that we'd want to mail it to everybody, but to give something that we could print out here and just hand out to the townships. And then pre-project communication meetings, and this is one
Kind of goes with M.
Yeah, so as we move into, trying to get better front-end information to the property owners that are going to be affected by projects, we are looking at starting to have these things that as we meet with them, and if we want commissioners to come with, we can obviously accommodate them coming and making sure that we can make the schedule work. But we would meet maybe at the township hall, maybe here, maybe some other building that is close by that's available, to actually go through some of the issues that are coming up and some of the whys of why we're doing, of what's happening out there. So they can at least have an understanding, for example, on Silver Lake Road at airport.
Yeah.
So, that's a big project there have been some concerns that were raised and Wayne answered them for the subdivision that's concerned about people driving through. You know, and we are going to be making contact with them as this starts to go. And if they feel like, hey, maybe we need some signs to say no through traffic. Their concern, from what I understand, is, you know, potentially if you put up a no through traffic, people realize it's a through road.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're gonna go around it.
Valid, I can see that.
Yeah,
So,
You're talking about Horizons too. You're talking about that one,
yeah, Horizons.
right? Okay, yeah, I would agree. I don't think a lot of people know you can drive through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But it,
It
but.
does look interesting, you now.
But also like, but one thing I will say about that is, if you drive through it to avoid that intersection, you have to make a left across Five.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
It's not only a
Yeah,
bad idea in
yeah.
general, but I don't think most people would choose that. So I don't think it's too concerning that we're advertising that, because the first time you get stuck trying to turn left on that, you would regret it instantly.
So
Yeah.
hopefully, and I know we rush it on this one because it was so close. I don't
Yeah.
know if anything's gone out
And
yet,
we're-
but
we haven't got 100% in play
So-
here yet, so.
Larry was able to kind of query who's in the district. Is that the right way to say it? Sure. So we're gonna do postcards, is that what you said?
Just, yeah, something, either that, or if it really comes down to it, and we'll figure out how many people actually live in the sub
Okay.
versus have rentals in the sub. Maybe we just go out and, you know, have our interns just go out and hang it on their door
So
one day, so that we can actually meet with them and talk to them and.
And they'll have an opportunity to see the
Come and-
drawings for the
and
project
drawings of
and
the process,
so that they
so
can
it's
see how it's gonna look
try to be
like.
proactive
But
before they have.
all the other subs too around there, right? It would be Lone Tree, or not, I'm sorry, not Lone Tree, Silver, what is it?
I don't
Whatever
think
it's
Stone Ridge
No,
would have been.
Stone Ridge, but I'm talking about the Woman Eagle.
Yeah,
that
they
is
wouldn't,
the-
yeah. they
okay.
wouldn't
So
do
this,
that.
this first time is kind of like, we're gonna feel it out, and then hopefully from there, we'll get into a groove, like for Heron Road.
When is that project happening?
Yeah, when's the timetable?
Silver Lake, South
I
Airport.
saw something.
Like right after
around-
Cherry Festival.
That one, pull that up there. That's why I brought my,
It's
my,
gonna be
my
huge.
staff
Like,
report.
Already, it is
I'm gonna-
very backed up at rush hour, which is why it needs to be fixed.
I know, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna.
but we can add another lane.
But it is, really the only way to go home west
Mhm.
from
Well, yeah.
anywhere other than the city.
I
of
will tell you, I
Yeah.
love what changed up here, for example, when we went the 2 lanes and the turning left.
Yes.
At the end of Hammond here.
Yes,
I mean, it helped a lot. It keeps traffic. You wanna make that light, you're gonna make that light. I
this
mean,
project is gonna make a significant
Right.
change in rush hour traffic. There's no doubt about it, but it is gonna be a little painful.
It says July 11th, completion date of November 30th.
So that's
That long?
significant.
There's a lot of shifts because of the nature of the construction.
So what we have, so we had a notice to proceed there June 14th. We had a pre-construction meeting. So is to be scheduled soon. So we put in the contract a progress clause. We tell them, here's the window that we want it. When we do the pre-construction meeting, then they come in with a construction schedule that then says, okay, we're gonna start July 17th.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. So we tell them a window that they can operate in, and then they come in with a schedule.
So that wasn't an actual estimate.
It's not the
It's
whole,
not that,
but it is gonna be a longer project than normal,
Yeah.
simply because of the
Well,
staging.
right.
How long before in a project in general, do you put up those signs that let people know, like
So-
coming next Monday, you won't be able to turn here anymore?
So our message boards, our portable message
Yeah.
boards, we typically put those up approximately 2 weeks before we start.
Oh, it's public.
I like those.
That generally catches people, because sometimes people go on vacation, when they go on vacation, they go for a week. So doing it 1 week, usually you're missing someone. We found that 2 weeks seems to be that nice magical number that we catch people. And then we keep them right up, and then we kind of start to, within a couple days beforehand, we're kind of switching up the messages, starting Monday.
So
And-
your contractor gives you at least a 2 weeks heads up on that start date, then?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we typically, because there's a certain amount of time period that they have to kind of get everything in play get materials, making sure that materials are coming in on this. So we usually have several weeks out. Like right now, we're looking at like Heron Road, for instance. We know that they're gonna be starting in August on that one there. We know our painting contractor, we had our creek on here the other day. We know they're gonna start July 17th after Cherry Fest.
Yeah.
So we get those dates out there, 2 to 3 weeks in advance minimum on that. Because we have to have a certain amount of time too, so that we can schedule our staff. So our techs schedule our consultants that do our density and soil and concrete tests. They have to have an adequate enough time too to be able to schedule and handle all that work.
So,
It's gonna be a big project.
and a new model hopefully will help.
Yeah,
the
so this public
understand.
engagement model, obviously too late now for this project,
Well,
but this is the type of project that you guys would have
Yeah, I
done.
think we're still gonna have.
I think
We're still gonna try to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're still
No,
gonna,
but you're talking about an in-person meeting. is
Yeah,
what
No,
you're-
no, we're still
We're still gonna do that.
Oh, I thought you weren't doing an in-person.
No, no, we're still
No,
gonna
no,
try
we're
to-
still doing
We're
it.
still got, we've actually, I think we talked to Garfield, right?
no, I haven't got a chance to
But
do that
it's-
yet
but it's
either,
June
so,
22nd.
no,
Right.
it's not starting though.
No, today is June
It's gonna
22nd.
start sometime after the Cherry Festival. We don't know yet when it's gonna start.
That's like 2 weeks away, the Cherry Festival, which is crazy, but like it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The plan is to have that for
Yeah.
this project.
We have to start somewhere. We're starting with a
Today
So-
is
No, no,
the
we're having that.
second.
You might wanna get started on those postcards.
Well, no, and that's where.
Yeah,
We're
it's
done.
like, and Cherry
Yeah, yeah,
Fest is like the
Yeah.
earliest kind
Yeah.
of that it goes, you know what I mean? Like because of the way that the month falls, so it's
And-
soon.
Speaking of Cherry Festival, and you already talked about, right?
Yeah,
upcoming
some,
events.
but we also said that, as part of Kingsley's Days, whatever, we're gonna have a truck out there that has been, that we can sit down and have some people at for a little bit of it and, get some other interaction with the community and so they can actually see the fact that these plows are a lot bigger than you expect them to be when you're driving this far from them. So, trying to get some of that out. And we always, we've had kids that'll jump up in there and they get pictures and they love it. So we'll have something like that just to have a little bit of exposure.
Got to recruit those youngsters now.
That's right. Yeah, and it's, we have people that are willing to do this. These people, the drivers, I mean, they're willing to volunteer the time.
That's great.
So that's what, to me, is great. So one of the things that we've done is we've got 2 small banners that we're putting on there that say Grand Traverse County Road Commission with our seal. It's got the little phone scan that you can do from a distance. It'll be big enough that you can scan to learn more about what happens. And then because of the fact that the Teamsters are a major portion, we're putting a Teamsters emblem powered by Teamsters. So we're gonna engage as much as we can with that. And I think it's like last time, when I was new when I went through that first parade, but the kids really thought it was cool.
So anybody wants to go along with the truck, we do have everything worked out. If you want to
Yeah.
write on the
You're
back.
talking
if you
about
wanna
the
write-
Saturday parade or
Yeah.
The Saturday parade, yeah.
Saturday parade.
You'll have vests for us?
Sure. We got Grand Traverse County vests
All right.
So,
and reflective t-shirts if you'd rather wear a reflective t-shirt.
Suit that morning.
so plan on going. You can write on the back if you want, right? You can write on the trailer.
Yeah, you can
You can write on the trailer part if you want.
Yeah. You don't need to make that long. Okay.
All right. Parsons.
Parsons Road, did everybody have a chance to read this?
Yes.
Does it make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any questions? Okay.
So this is the kind of thing we're gonna do preemptively now
Yes.
on bigger, okay,
Yeah.
I like that. I think
Okay.
it's good. Why are we doing it? Because that's the first question everybody says, it's not my road, why are you doing this?
Yes.
Well, this will explain why,
Yeah.
and I think that's great.
Okay. So,
You should see the people up my street.
Oh, you're right in the middle of it.
I mean,
Yeah,
They're like, they're trying to cut through it. They're like, and then they get to the end, it's like road closed. Are you a fool? There are two signs that you can see before.
Well, that's the
Road
thing, too.
closed.
Signs are
And then they
advisory.
zip down the other direction, you know?
One of the things about the Parsons Road project that I wanted to really point out and tried to point out to people is not only are you explaining why you did it and all of that's important, but it's the perfect example of how to show people that you are doing proactive planning for future projects. You're already thinking ahead to the MDOT closure of Grandview and the improvements of the road that will likely be traversed by people the most because of it. And I think that when you point those things out, it shows the thought process and that things aren't reactive, that they're proactive. And I think that the best tool for that is a press release like this. We're already thinking ahead to this. It's one of the biggest complaints you get is that the groups don't talk together. And I know that you guys met with the different entities for that. And this is a great way to show that and show that everybody's communicating and planning ahead of time for a project that's gonna span over different municipalities.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of a hoot the other day. I just watching the construction sometimes, you know, I walk up the street, you know, for me, my phone still works down at the end of the street. So heck, I can do that. And, you know, the engineer was out there with this straight edge and checking out the crown and the exact, you know, perfect.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, shaped just right, you know, he's like. So, hey.
Nothing smells like fresh asphalt.
Right, well, this was actually where it was still doing the dirt when they were still shaping, when they were watering and shaping the. It's fun.
Any additional comments?
I am good.
All right.
Other than the fact that I am on vacation next week,
Oh, that's
the
right.
second week I am off, but I am at home and I am accessible. The first week, I'm gonna be at a campground. I don't know what my phone service is gonna be like, so.
Good for you.
If you have questions or anything,
It'll have to wait.
call Heather and she has my wife's cell phone number. She's the only one that has my wife's cell phone number. So if there's an absolute emergency, you can talk to Heather. She will then call my wife's phone.
We all deserve to
There
unplug.
is never a reason to
Yeah.
justify a vacation.
When is our
Ever.
So
manager's evaluation coming up?
It's not scheduled yet.
We just have,
Did we?
We just had one.
we did one in November.
Okay, November. I'm just trying to mentally keep tracking it, because you know, I'm on top of things like this.
Yeah.
You know, so,
We still have a few months on that one.
Yeah.
before we get
And you're more, I mean, if you guys have concerns, questions or whatever, you know.
I just, the format of it, I wanna discuss.
yeah, I
it.
want to talk about the format. Yeah, I
We
agree.
can start doing that.
Yeah.
But we're not really doing it until.
Right, that's really my thing is. just
Yeah,
the
I
format.
agree with you.
Maybe we can get with Heather.
Okay.
Or give your
Yeah.
suggestions to Heather.
And I'll tell you,
She's
we've
one
done
that
it,
helps out together.
we've done it a couple different ways. We did it here, the way that I did it at the library once, and it, I thought it was, it went well,
Yeah.
but it's all kind of, it was a little confusing
Okay.
the last time, so
Any other comments?
I'm good.
I have a few questions. You went so fast through the reports that I just.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's fine, but I figured I'll wait for the commissioner's questions, part of the agenda. So when I'm looking at the staff report, one of the questions that we were talking, one of the issues that South Airport Road and Silver Lake Road intersection. Generally, a general question, when we enter into these contracts, it doesn't matter who it is with, do we have a standard liquidated damages clause that if they go so many days beyond the agreed upon completion date, that for each day there's gonna be liquidated
Penalties,
damages penalties?
We follow the MDOT specifications, and in there's liquidated damages
Okay.
charged.
Do we actually enforce them, or are they just in the contract? Because
We-
it's supposed to be there.
We have them in there, and we have enforced them in the past.
Do we have? Okay, all right. What's the standard?
rare. I mean,
What's the
they
standard?
normally do
If it
things.
matters to them, they'll make it work.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's the standard? Like how many days delay does it have to be before those, that clause kicks in, do you know?
So the clause kicks in when
Right,
it
the
is on the
first
date,
day.
right.
When do we enforce it?
There are different ways in which to do that. You can have calendar days, which is, I think, the easiest to deal with. But you can have working days, then you have to account for rain days and things of that nature. So we typically run with the calendar days because it's just clear.
And I have some more.
No, go ahead.
On these projects that we do, that we contract with, where there's heavy equipment being, not that we contract with, let's just say there's a project, like for example, the project that's going on Cedar Run Road where they're laying the sewer.
Okay.
They're using quite a lot of heavy equipment on that road, and I know that road was paved not that long ago. And now you can see some damage to that road and pavement there. Do we require that contractor or to then remediate that damage, or whoever is contracting with Elmer's to do that project, do we require them to have
Yes.
consult with us?
Yes, so that's a permit, and so what we typically do on those types of things is we'll review those roads beforehand. But we'll go out there and when they are wrapping their project up, our permit inspector will go on out there and review that. And if we've got physical damage, then they are required to repair that.
Okay.
I'll point you right down the road here, so Barlow, so go across the street there. And when Consumers last year was doing their gas line up and down through there, certain areas they were well outside in the shoulder, other areas they got up into the shoulder. Some areas they had to go into the lane. So if they stay just out in the shoulder area, then they can saw cut that asphalt and just repave as a new shoulder. If they wind up coming into the lane, we don't let them just saw cut in the middle of the lane. We make them address the whole lane width out there. Because we know that having a seam
Right.
in a lane where the tires go will be the first failure. And so we don't allow that.
Thank you for that. But still sticking with that intersection, in that report, it says it is anticipated that with the amount of construction for this fall, that CE services will be required for this project. I'm assuming CE means consulting.
It's construction.
Construction engineering. My question, generally speaking, is this. If the MPO moves forward and we are part of that, the assumption is that these construction projects will be initiating and be involved in more construction projects. I think we have had a discussion, Alan and Jason both have, and I to some extent have said that, we'd rather do these services in-house rather than paying money outside. So at what point, I know our engineering positions are filled, but at what point should we start considering maybe expanding and bringing on someone so that we can do this in-house?
The question has three facets, the way I look at it. Is number one, if we bring another full-time body on, can we keep them busy all year round? Do we have enough work for them to do in the winter? Or are we better off hiring like a seasonal person? Those are our different questions that need to be addressed. We also then need to look at, okay, maybe it's just this one small time. And as we're developing these project schedules and you start seeing where you have these crunches, sometimes it's just easier to hire like a Gosling or somebody to just pick up the slack for one small portion of a project.
But speaking to that, if, whether they have enough work, I mean, can we look forward at our asset management plan and what we're planning on doing and literally have our engineer working on things so that they're just sitting on the shelf waiting to be implemented? Is that possible? Can we do stuff like that?
Well, we can, but keep it, so there's two different facets here. One, we could literally pick a date, November 1, we could put bids out for all of our projects. Depending on how we set our progress clause. Our progress clause is, we say you can build the project within this date to this date. Then they come back with the schedules and then we start to figure it out. It's a little game of Tetris. And now we're trying to cover all of the necessaries between the office tech, the engineer, and the field inspection services. Or we can say, all right, no, we're gonna drive the complete schedule and we're gonna say this project is here to here, here to here, here to here. The problem that you get and why we don't go to that micromanagement extent is because when we define it that hard, we have to either be way out in front and beat even MDOT in order for contractors to say that's when their schedule's open, or
But
they don't bid.
outside of scheduling though, I mean, you know, the engineer determines the materials that are gonna be necessary for a particular project. I mean, an additional engineer in off times could, you know, build those kits, so to speak, you know, of what we're gonna need perhaps,
And we are working towards that very,
Okay.
we have, the new engineer we have, the one that came to us from Long Beach, California, she's really picking up quite quickly. She deals with our techs and she's a bright girl. She's gonna be a very big contributor to design. She's a stronger person in design than indicated by the years of life and experience, so she's good. So I think, you know, you start looking at some of those things, and yes, it's a lot of it needs to be, we need to develop that full 5-year plan, which is kind of what the whole idea behind the MPO is too, is you have a 5-year plan, you have a 20-year plan, you have a 1-year plan. And so you start working and doing these things, and then you can start looking at, if we get projects out that we're saying, okay, for next year, we're gonna do this, next year's gonna be that, this is gonna be that. That makes it easier for us to then start scheduling how many techs we need.
one other thing, and you mentioned the MPO. Are we, when we're talking about the MPO, are we back billing our engineering services when we go to these projects? I mean, so for example, I mean, we should be recovering our engineering costs.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I just,
yeah, I think
kinda-
that's part of what you talked about is that it's actually.
I'm done, I'm done.
That's
okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. The last question on the Scoot update, it says that the South Airport Road and GT Mall advanced detection for eastbound is not operational. But you're looking at alternative location. Can you just provide some more detail on that as to what's going on?
So where the advanced detection previously was that Aldi Foods out there. So if you were coming from 31 and you go on there, our right of way is very narrow there. And so we had our advanced detection out there on a pole. Behind the curb and gutter, yet twice it's gotten run over.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Oh, yeah.
decimated.
You can see
Wow.
it.
Yes.
Wow.
So what we were looking at is the property owner just beyond that is Garfield Township Parks and Rec. So we were working on trying to get an approval from the parks to use one of our poles in the back and to set a pole and then put that up where it's out there and up. And we were seeking alternatives while that was working through its process. We're seeking alternatives of going on the inside of the curve where you don't get too many people sliding off of the road on the inside of the curve. I mean, they're gonna go the other direction. And we were able to kind of go back through our right-of-way records. We obtained that, yes, we do have room there between the sidewalk. In fact, there's a stake out there now. We verified that. So we are actually going through and I sent an email over to the township supervisor here last week, thanking them for going through that effort of looking and considering our request. But it's no
You
longer.
found an alternative.
We
Okay.
found that alternative. So we're going through that process now. We're actually working on getting it scheduled, doing the mistake to get that back up and get that
What
functioning.
is it with people in cars?
Yeah, like mine. I mean, kids.
Okay, we're just gonna ban all the cars.
Right, yeah.
Well, thank you, thank you.
That's fine.
I'm fine.
It's very
That's all the
informational,
questions.
The Scoot system works. I've seen it in action. That's my common route that I drive, and it works and it makes a difference. I noticed the difference before I even knew what Scoot was. I had noticed a difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can hit all the
Yeah,
lights.
yeah.
It really does work, and I hope that we can have it consistently operational, because I think it will make a big difference.
But it works both ways too. If you hit one red light, then you hit every red light.
Yeah.
So that's the downside of that, because that has happened to me. It's like, well, what's going on here? You know?
Yeah, so, and a lot of it is just based on which way is the major portion. of the
Yeah,
road.
yeah.
Just made for instant acceleration.
I have two, and the name just blew out of my mind. The road with the Montessori school,
Yes.
Frankie, what's our
Yeah,
schedule
that's
on that? Do we have? a
They aren't done yet, as far as we
Still
know.
not done yet? Okay. So as soon as they're done, they're gonna.
We're gonna
notify
start going
us.
out there and we're gonna start looking at
That is
engineering and state and survey and that type of stuff.
When is the Meyer done?
Yeah, I was gonna, yeah,
It's not?
And-
because that would be another factor, wouldn't it? Like Myers construction.
Well, that entire ingress egress.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly, yeah, yeah.
I thought they were done. I haven't been to Meyer in a long time.
Me either.
And my last comment, and I don't know when I'm studying, but the spy cams that you see appearing, like on Hammond and 3 Mile,
Oh,
and
that camera.
those are not ours. Those are the contracts that the townships have done with
Sheriff's Department.
sheriff's
Yeah.
departments.
Yeah.
Those are not our cameras that are taking pictures of your cars. I just want to say that
And to
publicly.
that point, they're also not for traffic enforcement, they're for.
Yeah.
Not now, they're not.
That's.
Well, yeah, I just want to keep it
Yeah,
clear.
they've
I've had some
already
people
called
ask
several
me, and it's
people.
like,
Yeah.
those are not.
They're not for
our
people running red lights and taking pictures. like
No.
they did.
So I just want to put that in the public sphere, that they are not our cameras that are taking pictures of your
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
Our camera, we just do motion detection, right? I mean, the computer's basically looking at X and O's when we're doing our school.
Our grid smart cameras, we look at particular zones, we're detecting vehicles. It's for the proper
Yeah.
light phasing.
There's no retention of
You know,
what's going
we
on.
count, we have the ability to count vehicles. But we don't have the resolution to, and we don't have license plates on the front of the cars, so we can't see
Yeah.
license plates.
Just want to put it out there, because I've had people ask me, and I'm like, those are not ours.
Everything is not our fault.
NSA can't access our cameras.
Let's just put it that way. Not everything is our fault.
There's no public. So.
Move to adjourn.
Support.
No.